Guess who we have back? Yay, this is like a yearly gift for us. James Sloane, he's worked in the medical field for many, many, many years. He worked in the ER and I guess ambulance too, was it? So he's got a lot of experience of what happens when people are messed up. So he's going to tell us what he saw and experienced and what he learned in the ER, and I'm going to share it with you how to not end up there. So thanks for being here, James, again. I really appreciate it. You've got a lot of experience in this, and you left the medical world too because you were unhappy with it.
Yeah, I was in allopathic medicine for 13 years, and then I switched over to holistic medicine from there. I finally decided to give up on the allopathic just because of both the corruption and the stupidity. I saw a lot of stuff that shouldn't have happened that was happening, and not just in the ER, but other places, including the ambulance and hospitals and so on and so forth. And just kind of got fed up with it because they're not there to really help people. Too often they were just strictly for the money. And so I finally, after 13 years, I just got fed up with it and I ended up leaving. It's
all about drugs and cutting out body parts, right? And shooting them up with drugs, not exactly what caused this, what can we do to prevent it in the future. But in an ER, it's usually more critical, life and death, like you got to do something now. And obviously there's accidents that happen and stuff like that, but what have you seen in the ER that was more serious that you could share with people to kind of avoid?
Mostly it was just avoiding doctors, because the doctors that I saw, most of them didn't know what they were doing. Like one of the worst cases I saw, we picked up a patient, this is when I was on the ambulance, so we had picked up a patient over at Showboat Hotel, and the guy was slumped over a slot machine, just soaking in sweat, looked like he just got out of the shower. He's complaining of chest pain, abdominal discomfort, so classic heart attack signs, so we kind of assumed that's what it was. And we didn't bother to put EKG on him right away. We just slapped him into the gurney, into the ambulance on the way. All of a sudden, the guy's head just kind of flops over like that, and we thought he had passed away. So we flipped on the lights and siren, which you normally don't do with a cardiac patient because of the emergency. We flipped on the lights and siren, ran back. By the time we got him back to the hospital, we had him awake again. He had fallen asleep on us.
Just too much to drink?
Not sure, but yeah, he was out like that. And we got the EKG on him by the time we got back. And the cardiac team was sitting there waiting for him, so they take him out and bring him into the hospital, and it turned out he didn't have a heart attack. And so they were chewing us out for calling it as a heart attack, which really wasn't wrong, because when we're not allowed to diagnose, you rule things out as you can, and we didn't have a whole lot of time to do that. So long story short, we're outside the door watching the doctor work on this guy, and while they're chewing us out, and I'm watching the doctor, and he goes to intubate the guy, which is where you put an airway in, so you take a laryngoscope and you go and you pull the tongue back so you can get the airway in, and the doctor was trying to intubate the guy while he was awake. And you can't do that. You're not supposed to intubate somebody while they're conscious because you got the gag reflex. And the other problem was that he never apparently used a laryngoscope before, because instead of going in and pulling the tongue back like he's supposed to, he's running the thing down the guy's throat. And so he yells to the assistants, goes, "Hold his head back further." So he pulls his head back a little further. He starts ramming the laryngoscope down the guy's throat even harder. He slit the inside of the guy's throat wide open. And the last thing I saw was they were pumping a bunch of blood out of the guy's throat. We had a call. We were gone. So I don't know if the guy survived or not.
Oh, man.
Yeah, one I thought of that was on the ambulance. We had a guy who was 350 pounds or so and had a massive heart attack. And we got down there second, because when they call people out, they call out like either city or county gets called, and then the ambulance gets called. So that way somebody gets there rapidly. So we got there second. And we get down there, the EMTs that had responded and the city unit were using the Ambu bag trying to aerate the guy. They weren't doing chest compressions, and the guy had vomited. They didn't clear his throat. They ended up pumping the vomit right down into his lungs and choked him to death. But this is the kind of quality that we have in our doctors. And each state is different. They got different standards for medical. Here in Nevada, we're actually the third worst healthcare system in the United States. Mississippi is the worst, and we're number 3. And so we get a lot of doctors that come here from other states where they might have gotten kicked out, malpractice.
Oh, great, we get the rejects.
Yeah, they come back here to get their licenses, because our entrance exams for medical and stuff are the easiest in the nation.
But for people that are watching from all over the country, what do you know happens everywhere that you could share that to be aware of or avoid, as far as the ER and try not to have, I mean, obviously, don't play with knives and guns and things like that, or drink poison, but there's got to be things that people do regularly because of bad habits and things that causes heart attacks or whatever.
Yeah, heart attacks, I'd say gallbladder attacks are a very common one. That gallbladder surgeries are the most common surgery performed. In most cases, they don't need to take the gallbladder out. Like back in the old days, they would actually use ox bile, give the ox bile to the patients, and the ox bile would dissolve.
Break it down.
And so it was very rare that the person would actually have to have the gallbladder removed. If it was like torn up or infected, then it probably has to come out. But for the most part, it's a very unnecessary surgery. So there are things to be done to prevent gallbladder disease. One, if the person still has their gallbladder, of course, and if they don't have peptic ulcers, I like digestive bitters. Just about half a dropper full on the tongue before your meals, and you put it on your tongue and swallow, and it stimulates the bitter receptors here in the back of the tongue. That will stimulate the vagus nerve, which branches off to different parts of the body, but it will stimulate stomach acid, bile secretions, pancreatic enzymes. That's why they call them digestive bitters, but they also will cleanse the liver. But the part with the gallbladder is it's increasing bile, and the increased bile dissolves the gallstones. So a lot of times it can, people can avoid the surgery.
And then kidney stones, and we're going to talk about heart in the next video because that's a pretty common thing. But how many ER visits do you think could be avoided if people change or improve their diet and lifestyle?
Well, it would be pretty much heart attacks and gallbladder attacks would be the two biggest ones. One of the most common mistakes I see people make is when they go take their medications or their supplements, well, especially medications because they're doing it for a particular reason. Let's say heart medication, high blood pressure medication, something like that. They take it with coffee, and coffee will bind the medications. The same thing with herbs. It binds herbs and prevents them from being utilized by the body. That's when I worked in the hospice, the way we get rid of old medications is you take used coffee grounds, you mix the medication in there, and the tannins that are in the coffee would bind to the medication and lock them up to where they can't be used again. So when people are taking the medication with their coffee or tea, black tea and stuff like that, it'd be the same, green tea, and those tannins in there will lock up those medications. And so they're taking a drug to supposedly save their life, and they're locking it up to where they can't be utilized. So they're kind of defeating the purpose there. So that's probably one of the most common mistakes I see with people. Mostly what we'd see would be auto accidents, of course, were the worst, and got pretty serious ones. We had a 17-year-old kid that he had actually crushed the steering wheel and bent it with his chest, and so crushed all of his chest area and stuff, and felt kind of bad for him because he was actually very afraid of needles too. And of course, in the ER, you're getting a lot of needles, but we see a lot of auto accidents. Of course, you got shootings. First shooting I saw was a 17-year-old kid, took 2 shotgun slugs to the chest. They ricocheted around and blew a hole out of his back about that big. There was another
Did he survive?
No, he was in an argument with another kid. Apparently the kid had been bullying him or whatever. And so he grabbed his grandfather's shotgun, and he ended up shooting 3 kids altogether. The first 2 were with buckshot. And then the one kid he hit directly in the shoulder. The other one was hit by stray. And then he switched over to shotgun slugs. The kid was coming down the street on his bicycle, and he shot him twice to the chest with shotgun slugs. So we see a lot of shootings. I see a lot of auto accidents. Child that was playing in the back seat unrestrained, and the grandfather was driving, went around the corner. Kid fell out, crushed his head. Again, didn't survive. So, most of what we saw was mostly auto accidents, I think, more than anything.
Everybody's on their cell phone. People run red lights. I mean, I see it all the time. Every intersection, somebody just can't wait. They have to run the light. That 1 minute is so important, but it could end your life, or it could maim you for the rest of your life. It's not worth it.
The one that I saw that really bothered me was, we're actually in the ambulance one time. We had a guy who had his baby on his lap while he's driving. That baby is going to be your airbag if you were to get into an accident. Oh, yeah. That's stupid. I see that. I see kids, again, unrestrained in the back seat, playing around. For one, they distract the driver, and 2, there is the risk that they might fall out.
This is the kind of stuff people need to hear. So drive safe, don't run the lights, drive slower, be more calm, don't be on the phone texting.
Keep a good distance between the car ahead.
Right.
Time to brake.
And nowadays, don't cut people off because of road rage. And there's a lot of like people getting shot or beat up or stalked, whatever. Usually most road rage is because somebody got cut off. Somebody got pulled in front of somebody else.
But yeah, people, they get crazy with their driving sometimes, and I've seen some pretty weird accidents.
What about stupid home things like swallowing bleach or accidental stupid stuff?
Yeah, we had one guy who, again, don't know why, but he drank lemon-scented nail polish. One of the most unique ones was when I was 15, I was working in the emergency room, and we had a patient come in who had been stung by a stonefish. He had it in his aquarium, and he didn't take it out when he's cleaning the aquarium, and the stonefish got him in the finger. Stonefish is poisonous. They will stop your heart once it reaches the heart. The doctors didn't know how to treat them, and I'm trying to explain to them. I took up scuba diving when I was 11, and part of our scuba training was we had to learn marine poisons, so I knew how to treat it. And I tried to explain to the doctors, and they didn't want to listen because, here's this 15-year-old trying to tell them. And so I said, why don't you call the fish store? Gee, what a good idea. The fish store didn't know either, so they called California. California didn't know either. So I got on, back then we had microfiche, and so I got on the microfiche and I looked it up. I found a relative of it, and I showed the doctors. He goes, okay, he's all yours. So I got my first patient when I was 15, and by then the poison was up to his shoulder, so he probably in the 15, 20 minutes it would stop his heart. Let's see, of course, drug overdoses, that'd be another one that we used to see.
How about the people that are really depressed and take too much of something? And
Actually, almost never saw suicide attempts.
really?
Yeah, it was quite rare. I think most people who were going to try to commit suicide usually succeeded. Had a few that didn't succeed. We had one guy that was in the brain injury unit, and he was maybe about, I'd say 19 or so, Asian guy, and his family was trying to force him to go to medical school, and he didn't want to go. He took a .357 to his head and took off basically everything through here was gone, and he survived.
How do you survive that?
No idea.
Wow.
Yeah, last I saw him, he was just learning how to feed himself again, but he was very, very, very slow.
You must have seen a bunch of people dying on you.
Oh, yeah.
What's that like?
Some of them were hard. I think more it was hard because dealing with the families, it's like I always had a hard time with what do you say to the family member. You can't sit there and say, I know how you feel, or,
Right, yeah.
When you say, I'm sorry, it's just...
Are there people that were actually talking and conscious, and then you saw them die and you knew they were gone, and it's weird because a few minutes ago you were talking to them? There's a human being alive and now they're not here. They're gone. That must be weird. How can they be gone? They were here a minute ago. Yeah,
in most cases you could tell they were about to die, though. I've had AIDS patients, for example, who would do what's called chain stoking. It's a intagonal breathing that would be a good indicator they're about to pass away. So you'd see, certain signs and stuff that they're not going to live much longer.
It must affect you emotionally somehow, seeing a life just leave a body. Or do you just get used to it after?
I don't know if you really get used to it per se, but it's something you have to accept. When you work in medicine, it's something you're going to have to accept. And even my girlfriend and business partner of 18 years, I was there when her father passed away because I was taking care of him until he passed away, and I had to go. I was there with him when he passed, and then I had to go tell them because he was at home. So I had to go wake up the family and let them know that he did pass. And so it's something that you have to accept it when you work in medicine because you're going to be around this kind of stuff. And
didn't your girlfriend die or something?
Yeah.
So you went through that. Did that prepare you for that?
No, her death was a lot harder. We had been together for 18 years, and her family, I hate to say it, but kidnapped her is the best I can say, because they took her, kind of coerced her into going to Mississippi. And she didn't want to go, but I think they had threatened her and stuff. And then when she got back there, they cut off all of her ties to the outside world. She wasn't allowed to use the computer. We tried to call. They would say she's sleeping, or they would never give her the messages, stuff like that. So they cut her off from the outside world, and it was a big mess. But so that was much tougher because she could have survived if they would have let her. And they were just no, we're taking you and that's it. And her dad passed away, her mom passed away a year after that, she passed away a year after that. So it was like all succession. But yeah, the death thing, like I said, to me it was harder to say just dealing with the families because it's just so uncomfortable. It just said you don't know what to say. I even like going to funerals for the same reason because it's
Right. What's your summary of your experience of all these years and seeing life and death and survival and hanging on? Is there something you could give people from that?
I kind of believe that, again, there's the plan or whatever, I guess the way we want to put it, because I've seen some things where people, you would definitely expect them to die, they didn't die, and then people you didn't expect to die did die. There's no rhyme or reason to it, really, and I've had plenty of close calls myself throughout my life that people would be surprised I'm still around, for that matter.
I think we've all had that. I've had a few, too.
Yeah, like I fell on a fence and lacerated my liver one time, and I didn't go to the hospital, and my friends were freaking out because I have friends in the medical field, and they're like, "You gotta go on." And I was like, "No, it was a slow bleed. It took 3 days for me to look like I was pregnant, so it was a very slow bleed." And I said, "It's gonna clot," and it did. So,
boy, you're taking a chance.
It took 6 months for all the blood to reabsorb, and
My God.
But I don't go to doctors. After the stuff I've seen here, I'll take my chances at home. Even when I crushed those 2 fingers with a 380-pound boulder, and they got gangrene in the fingers, and I treated it with ozone. I wasn't not going to the doctor. Doctors would have just cut them off.
Yeah.
So I bagged up the hand and did the ozone and regrew all the tissue. I saved both fingernails. And
How'd you do the ozone? How'd you get it?
just put the bag around.
Oh, in a bag?
Yeah, 5 or 6 months ago or so, I got bit by a brown recluse spider again, second time. But this time I got bit in the foot, and it did a whole lot of damage to my foot. I just started walking again normally about a month ago. Damaged a lot of the bone, the tendon, blood vessels, nerves, and so I was bagging the foot. Same thing, did the ozone. And ozone stops the necrosis of the tissue because the venom as it spreads just kills the tissue. And it's like a rattlesnake bite, just smaller amount of venom. And so the ozone actually stops the necrosis of the tissue, and it took down a lot of the pain and the swelling. And
How long did you have it running?
about 5 hours a night.
Oh, while you're sleeping?
Yeah.
You just had a bag around your foot tied up with the ozone.
Yeah, or while I was sitting around, because I couldn't walk for 2 weeks. I was bedridden for 2 weeks.
Well, I hope I never get bit by one of those. Jeez.
Yeah, this is the second time. They take, the first time I got bit here in the arm, and 2 hours shot down my arm. My whole arm like had been boiled in oil, and it took about 6 months for that to heal.
So did you go to the ER for that? You just ozonated yourself. That's
Yeah.
what you did.
Yeah, there's really nothing they can do because there's no antivenom here in the United States for
Really?
brown
For brown
recluse.
recluses?
Yeah, that's what I've heard. There's no antivenom for it. So all they'll do is really antibiotics, anti-inflammatories.
Which is the worst. Yeah.
Yeah, not really going to do anything for it. It's not going to address the venom.
Where were you when you got bit?
I have no clue. You don't feel them when they bite you. And they hide in dark places. So it could have been in the rock piles around my house, could have been in my shoe, could have been in the...
So people working in their garden can get bit.
Yeah, garages are a common place to find them, but they will hide in shoes, they will hide under your covers, any dark place.
Oh.
And you almost never ever see them.
Are they big?
Yeah, they're
Oh, they're little ones.
yeah, they're not that big, and they're just highly venomous. And
I shouldn't leave my shoes outside.
yeah, I had a neighbor got bit when probably I was about a teenager or so, and he got bit in the leg, and it went up his leg, and he ended up in the ER, real serious condition. And they've had people in ICU. People have actually died from them. They're pretty nasty little bites.
But they don't know what to do when you get there.
No.
They charge you $50,000 and they don't do anything.
Yeah. And then you hope that what they are going to do is correct, and so that I don't.
I mean, what can they do?
Really, they can't do much of anything. I mean, there's hyperbaric oxygen is the only thing. We do have hyperbaric oxygen chambers here, but...
Not everybody has an ozone machine. Is there anything that somebody can do on their own or just for safety? Just something, anything?
Well, if they got bit by a recluse, then more than likely, if they don't have an ozone unit, I would say definitely go to the hospital. because they do have the hyperbaric oxygen. There is a study I found on PubMed that found that hyperbaric oxygen therapy does work for brown spider bites. So it stops the necrosis again. But ozone is more effective than hyperbaric oxygen because it does a lot more things, but it's more reactive. But outside that, there's really not a whole lot they can do. So they're going to give you antibiotics to prevent secondary infection, and they're going to give you anti-inflammatories. And that's about all they can really do.
And both of those weaken your body more.
Yeah. So I haven't been to a doctor since I was 16 years old because so I saw too much stuff, and it's like, if I don't have to absolutely 100% go to the doctor.
Yeah, that's the first thing they do is give you antibiotics. I don't even care what it is. Just here, take some antibiotics. Let me wipe out your immune system.
Yeah, and there's so much other crap they're doing now that I don't agree with. Like, they automatically test you for all sorts of stuff when you go.
So they can charge you more money.
And then they're going to sit there. If you test positive or something, then it's like, oh, good, now we can give you all these drugs. And then there's some really bad cases lately of women who they're actually testing positive for drugs when they go to have their babies, and they're calling Child Protective Services or come and taking their children. And a lot of times it's because they're taking a medication that, like a pain reliever that the hospital gives them, and then they get tested, and it's like, oh, you tested positive for opiates. And there was a recent case where a lady ate a poppy seed bagel or something like that, and of course that tests positive for opium in some cases. And they came and took her child, and it took her, I think, a week or two to get her child back. And so these hospitals have gotten too invasive, I guess there's one word for it, greedy, and they're too connected with the government to where they're reporting people for things that they shouldn't be reported for. And even suspected child abuse, when there's been a lot of cases of that where it wasn't child abuse, but people are getting reported for it. I have a nephew in Reno that had that problem, and when he was very young, when he would go to breastfeed, he would just turn purple. And they didn't really know what was going on. He outgrew it eventually, but Child Protective Services came and tried to take him away. And my sister said, why don't you feed him and stuff before you take him away, feed him. And he turned purple right then and there. And so they found it wasn't child abuse. But people are being reported for things that they shouldn't be reported for. And I think the hospitals and the government has gotten too invasive into our lives. And
wow. So I guess just do your best to stay healthy and drive safe. Don't go in dark places.
Yeah, and there's a lot of simple things that I say people go to the hospital for the dumbest things. They'll go for a cold or a flu, which unless you have a secondary problem like COPD or something like that where the cold or flu is going to become life-threatening, there's no reason to go to the hospital for that. Or simple cuts, for example. Again, there's no reason to really go to the hospital. A lot of what people they get stitches for, a butterfly bandage would seal it up. It's just, I saw, a lot of times where people were coming in for things that they really didn't need to be there. They're very simple things to treat. And one, you're going to save your bill, and two, you're not going to tie up the hospital, because a lot of times we were on what's called Divert, where the hospital was so full that they couldn't put people anywhere, so they actually bunked them down in the ER. They could be there for a week or two just sitting in the ER because there was no rooms up on the floor. Then they'd have the nurses go in, which is, to me, never made sense, but they'd have the nurses go in and check the charts and see who can be discharged. That's not their job. That's the doctor to decide whether or not a person can be discharged. But they'd have the nurses going in and saying, oh yeah, this person's fine enough to go home, and they'd free up beds and move people from the ER up. And that was a very common thing I saw back then.
An ER costs more than a normal bed.
Oh yeah.
So they just rack up the money.
Yeah.
Oh jeez.
Yeah, they're trying to keep the beds filled, so they said they bunk the people down here until they get a place to put them up here, and they just keep this full and that full at the same time, because that's where they're making their money.
Well, I guess we could go on forever, but thanks, James, for the just share. I'm sure you got a million ER stories. People, just do what you can to avoid the ER if you can. It's not the womb-like embracing, come in, we'll take care of you place that you think it is. All right, well, we'll see you in the next video, James. We're going to talk about heart conditions, next one. Stay tuned. We'll see you in the next video.